Hello, brothers and sisters. Father Frank Pavone here, National Director of Priests for Life. Welcome to Priests for Life TV. Thank you for taking the time to watch because you're about to see another broadcast segment on this brand new internet pro-life television channel. We are going to bring you quality programming from the present as well as from the past. Live events, pre-taped events. You'll see homilies, you'll see interviews, you'll see talks at various pro-life gatherings, prayer vigils, commercials, music videos, a whole combination of inspirational and instructional material that we've put together over the years and that our team continues to put together. So I hope that you'll enjoy this broadcast segment that's about to begin and share it with others. Tell other people about Priests for Life TV. And share these videos with them so that they too can find the strength and the knowledge they need to be part of the pro-life movement. Enjoy now these broadcasts of Priests for Life TV.
And you say the church should be involved in elections, but that you don't want the church to be a political entity. Can you explain the distinction?
A political party and a political campaign, and these are not in and of themselves bad things. These are tools for us to govern ourselves, and people should be involved in campaigns and in political parties. But they are trying to elect that person of their choice or that group of people. And so their message to the people is elect this man, elect this woman, and they will go after whatever reasons they can to get people to vote for those individuals. Depending on whatever audience it is, they'll invoke the reasons that might get them to vote. Ultimately, they don't care if there's a reason or not. Hey, just vote for our person. You figure out your own reason. What's the difference with the church? The difference with the church is that while we want people to participate in that process, we don't, as an institution, say, vote for John Smith. We don't organize as a political party to get John Smith elected. What we organize to do is to teach the people who are going to elect him, or perhaps someone else, what are the principles by which we make those choices. So, for example, if the first purpose of government is the protection of life, if it is, as we have already seen, and as I lay out in the book, the protection of rights that God has given us and government must protect, well, then we have to take that into account when we make our voting choice. Does this candidate believe that we have a right to life that the government cannot interfere with? So the church is to be fostering the political process, yes, talking about the issues that matter, talking about the responsibility to vote, guiding people even in terms of informing them of the positions of the candidates, but stopping short of actually endorsing them. Because when the church teaches the principles, unlike a political party or a political campaign who's going to say, we want you to vote for John Smith, the church is going to let the people come to their conclusion. The church is simply going to say, when you make your decision, keep these principles in mind.
You assert various times in the book that the Catholic Church is on a collision course with herself. What do you mean?
The church is in various ways on a collision course with herself. We are involved, and when I say we, I mean the church in the United States and also Priests for Life in particular, in a big battle with the current presidential administration over what's called the HHS mandate. They're trying to force us to violate our faith and our conscience in our employment practices and our health insurance in particular. And we're saying no. Now the church is therefore insisting on her freedom to teach and live her faith, and is saying the government cannot issue any mandates contrary to that. But then we see the church issuing mandates of her own that limit our ability to teach and live out our faith. And I'm talking again about those mandates that come out at various times from bishops' conferences or dioceses that say that we cannot, for example, distribute certain voter education materials, voter guides, or appear to be too political or partisan. And it's like, wait a minute. We have the freedom to teach our teachings even if it appears to be political. Appearing to be political is not some kind of limitation on the church's freedom. But we're on a collision course with ourselves, because we're speaking out of both sides of our mouth. We're saying at the one hand, yeah, we got to have the freedom to teach the faith. And on the other hand, oh, well, don't say this because, it's going to run afoul of the tax law. There's other forms of collision course here related to this. The documents of the church, the popes, the bishops, have been very, very clear about the importance to engage the political process. We have an obligation to do that. And then, yet, on the other hand, very often on the local level, again, there are all kinds of restrictions placed on what we can do and what we should do and what we can say and what we can't say. Can't have it both ways. Either going to be engaged in the process, which means you're going to say and do certain things regarding the election, or you're not going to be engaged. And likewise with collaboration. The church's documents talk about the collaboration of everybody within the church, clergy and laity and all kinds of organizations all working together to inform one another and to get a common task done. But then when we start looking at these fears about violating the tax law, we see the opposite of collaboration. We see churches and dioceses saying, well, no, don't accept any political material from any other groups, no voter information from any other groups. As a matter of fact, if they come to bring it to your church, throw it in the garbage. They literally say this in writing, throw it in the garbage. That's not the kind of collaboration that the church's own documents call for, and that our understanding of everyone's call by God himself to participate in this mission of building a better society requires. And so this is a multifaceted collision course, and we've got to decide which side of the fence we're going to be on as a church. Now, having said that, I would say, you know what? The church has already decided it. It's there in the documents. It's there in the teachings. So let's cast off these silly fears, and let's work together to get the job done.
You quote various memos that have come out from Catholic dioceses at election time and that you say are particularly unhelpful. Can you give us an example?
Yes, my book actually quotes from a lot of these memos. And what these are memos from the church's institutions taking the vagueness of the IRS interpretation of the law that says churches cannot intervene in a political campaign, and actually making that vagueness worse. And the problem with these memos is that, again, there is a collision between what these memos say and what the church says in her official documents about the freedom we need to have to teach the faith, even in matters relating to politics. So let me give an example here. One diocesan memo says, to be careful and diligent about not promoting or discrediting any political party or candidate, not promoting or discrediting. And in another such memo, it says, do not even appear to endorse or oppose particular candidates for public office or political parties. Now let's stop and think for a moment. The church's position is pro-life. The position of the Republican Party is pro-life. The position of the Democratic Party is pro-abortion. If I preach pro-life, am I going to appear to oppose the political party that is pro-abortion? Of course I am. How can I teach what the church teaches and not appear to oppose a political party that teaches the opposite? I don't know how we're supposed to carry this out. And then you have a memo that says this. Indeed, it is the church's right and obligation to make its teachings on moral ideas known. That's right, so far so good. But then it goes on to say, as long as these teachings do not run afoul of the rules on political activity. Now, I mean, this is absurd. In other words, Jesus Christ gave us the divine mandate to teach the truth to all nations, but because of a 1954 a tax code law that was put in there, don't break the rule about that. What does that have to do with the freedom of the church and as this memo itself acknowledges, her right and obligation? Why is it a right and obligation? Because it comes from Almighty God. So something's wrong here, and that's why these memos are just not helpful.
You describe in Abolishing Abortion how there needs to be a new, quote, opening of the windows of the church. What do you mean? You
know, sometimes within the church we restrict ourselves far too much. And there is in our day very much a new climate of clericalism. And what we mean by clericalism, and it's not just a sin of the clergy, many of the laity fall into it as well, is this attitude that the clergy are to be given automatic deference. Just because we're clergy, anything we say goes. Well, that's not the teaching of the church. We have a specific role, a very special role. We are the ones primarily responsible for teaching the faith, and in a diocese, that primary responsibility is that of the bishop. The priests are co-laborers with the bishop, and of course, in the whole world, it's the primary duty of the pope. So we acknowledge there is a structure, there's a hierarchy, there's authority in decision-making, but we also acknowledge that everyone in the church is equal. We are all equal by our baptism. We are all equal in our basic human dignity. So if somebody makes a decision, well, if it's a legitimate authority and a decision legitimately made, then those subject to that decision have to follow it. But they also have a right to know something about it. And there's a spirit sometimes within the church, there's a climate that says, well, you know, the decision was made and we get no explanation. Or there's a climate that is impervious to input, advice, or criticism. And the actual official teaching of the church is very, very different from that. And what we see, and I quote it in this book in various places, from the Second Vatican Council and from Pope John Paul II and from other places, and let me quote this, for example, is that by reason of the knowledge, competence, or preeminence which they have, the laity are empowered, indeed sometimes obliged, to manifest their opinion on those things which pertain to the good of the church. So when we're speaking, for example, about the church's role in elections, there are lay people that have a lot of expertise in this. Attorneys who will tell us we are free to say and do certain things. So a bishop shouldn't make a decision about what the diocese can and cannot do, or what the parishes can and cannot do, in a vacuum. He should make it with the proper input from these experts and really a listening heart. It's not all about your authority to do what you're going to decide. It's about us as a community all working together, because we all have responsibility to advance the church's mission, not just the priests.
Your book articulates pro-life strategy and speaks about the need to increase the tension in our society about abortion. What does that mean, to increase the tension, and how is it accomplished?
There is a tension between the mindset that would accept abortion, see it as a right, see it as a choice, and the natural tendency that we have to react against gruesome violence. In our human nature, we shrink away from violence, from dismemberment, from decapitation, from what the terrorists do. And if we look at abortion in the eye, we will shrink away from it. That's the tension. That on the one hand, you've got a good many people and institutions that are ideologically in the so-called pro-choice camp, and yet when the horror of abortion is revealed, that's a tension. People become very uncomfortable because they realize there's a contradiction here. How can I say it's a freedom of choice when I'm looking at the dismembered, broken body of a baby? And you see that tension is reflected when those in the ideological camp that favors abortion will not even look at or speak about what an abortion actually is. It leads to the strange contradiction that those who favor abortion, the last thing they want to talk about is abortion. So we in the pro-life camp, we need to force that tension. If it's going to make people uncomfortable, you know what? That's too bad, because this is the only way out of this disconnect and blind spot, as we were speaking earlier. It's the only way out, is to have that tension and to recognize that that tension is necessary to resolve this conflict in our society.
Hello friends, Father Frank Pavone here, National Director of Priests for Life. Well, it is that time of year for commencements and graduations, and I want to congratulate all those families who have students graduating at every level of education, whether adult students or children all the way down to the grade school level. This is such a happy time. It's such an important time as they finish one phase of their educational training and embark on new responsibilities in life or new levels of schooling. The commencement ceremony is so highly symbolic, so meaningful for this transition in life. And that is why one of the things we at Priests for Life always recommend at this time of the year is that graduating classes remember the students who would have been graduating with them, but for the sad fact that they were killed by abortion. So many students would have been alive, flourishing, enjoying the benefits of education and enjoying the accomplishments of graduation had they not been aborted. The rates of abortion in this country have been as high as 1 out of every 3 pregnancies. And brothers and sisters, to remember these missing children is very, very appropriate. Because when we think about it, commencement, in fact, the very purpose of education leading up to a commencement, is to prepare that student for the challenges of life. And the challenges of life include facing up to very, very sad and tragic realities like abortion. Some people might say, well, why do we have to talk about a topic like this on a joyful event like commencement? Because the purpose of commencement is not to give rose-colored glasses to the graduates. It's to help them face the world as it is and to make it better. It's to help them confront injustice as it is and to bring about more justice. It's in fact, especially if the school is claiming to give a Christian education, it is in fact to send disciples into the world to transform the kingdom of death into the kingdom of life, the kingdom of Jesus Christ. So what do we recommend? Well, perhaps at a graduation ceremony, one of the chairs can be left empty, draped perhaps with a cap and gown and pointed out as a chair representing all these missing children. Perhaps a special candle can be lit and be in full view, or a mention or a prayer made for the children lost to abortion. And none of this is meant to be a condemnation of those who have had abortions, because we who reject abortion do not reject those who have had abortions. Rather, we embrace them with forgiveness and mercy and love. And so a prayer and a remembrance of the unborn children also becomes a prayer of mercy and healing for those who made the mistake of resorting to abortion. This can all be done in a very positive and meaningful way. Let's pray, let's speak up, let's do what we can in these days and weeks while so many commencement ceremonies are taking place to encourage them to remember the unborn and to inspire in these graduates at every level a readiness to protect and defend the children who need it most, those still in the womb. Again, congratulations to all those who are graduating at this time of year. May God bless you and make you faithful witnesses to the gospel of life.
You say in the book that in a certain sense the abortion debate hasn't even begun in our country. What do you mean, and how do we begin the debate?
We have a so-called debate on abortion in our country, but many of those debating the opposite positions on this issue are talking past each other. Because what I have in my mind when I say the word abortion is the dismemberment of a living human child, and I can see the broken body parts. And what the person I'm talking to who may be on the other side of the issue may have in their mind when they say the word abortion is something very different, very much sanitized, something that is very much abstract. It's not bloody victims or body parts. It's choice and constitutional rights and freedom. Well, then there's not really communication going on there. There's not really a discussion of abortion. There's two discussions going on. One about stopping dismemberment of children, and the other about upholding constitutional rights and women's health. That's not a debate. That's two people talking past each other. So to begin the debate on abortion, we have to agree what we're talking about. And what an abortion is not something that you or I or the pro-abortion people decide. It is what it is. It's a procedure, and the medical textbooks tell us, tears the arms and legs apart, crushes the head. Let's start by talking about what we want to talk about. And that's what I mean by the debate has not, in many cases, has not even started.
How does abolishing abortion help people understand the strategy behind the undercover videos being released about Planned Parenthood?
This book actually talks about the strategy of exposing abortion. It's a biblical principle. Paul's letter to the Ephesians 5:11 says, have nothing to do with the fruitless works of darkness, but rather expose them. And I talk in the book about the fact that a key element in bringing abortion to an end is to look it in the eye, quoting actually John Paul II, to have the truth, to the strength to look at things in the eye and to call them by their proper names, including when they're very horrific evils. Exposing abortion means exposing the procedure, exposing the damage it does to people, and then thirdly, exposing the corruption in the abortion industry. And to expose the corruption in the abortion industry, we do that by opposition research. We do it by dialogue with people in the industry. We do it by listening to the testimony of the people who have come out of the industry. And a fourth way we do it is by going into the industry undercover. So as this book was being written, I knew about the project that was going on with the taping of these meetings and conversations within the leadership of Planned Parenthood. And so I even say in the book, I said, we are going to have very soon a public manifestation of exposing abortion in ways that have not been seen before on this scale. And that's what engages people. It helps them overcome that blind spot and that disconnect that they have about the unborn child.
You speak about the need to reframe what the conflict over abortion is in our society. What do you mean by that?
In abolishing abortion, I point out that we have to reframe what the conflict is over abortion, because a lot of people think that it's a conflict between a mother and her child. And a lot of people will feel naturally drawn to be on the side of the mother, especially if she's in distress and some kind of serious social problem. But that's not really what the conflict is. It's not between the rights of the mother and the rights of the child. It's between mother and father and baby and family on one side and a corrupt, unscrupulous, destructive abortion industry on the other side that is out for nothing but itself. Doesn't care about women, doesn't care about the babies, doesn't care about women's health. It is a bloodthirsty, money-hungry, out-of-control industry. And we know this. We know the abortion industry. We've been looking at it from the inside for decades. That's the conflict. And when we can frame laws as not, pro-life laws are not restricting the rights of women or reducing access to women's health, but rather protecting women and their families, their children, from this unscrupulous, destructive abortion industry, when we frame it that way, then people can understand what it is that we're doing. And they can understand how to reconcile their natural tendency to uphold freedom, choice, and women's rights with also their natural tendency to want to protect the vulnerable child. Those two are not in opposition. They don't need to be. They actually go together in the pro-life battle.
Right. Well, you do write in the book about the corruption in the abortion industry, and you say that one cannot practice vice virtuously. Can you explain that a bit and tell how it impacts the fight against abortion?
Each person has only one conscience, and if your conscience is blurred and broken enough that you can actually kill a living human baby, well, then you're going to be doing a lot of other wrong things as well. You can't practice vice virtuously. You can't be committing the murder of children and at the same time, keep your tax records just right and follow all the moral standards of medicine and avoid malpractice. The abortion industry, which is based on the killing of children, is mired in all kinds of other immoral and illegal activity, malpractice, sexual abuse, and as we see in the videos that have been released, even the, 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 And the strategy I outline in the book is that because you cannot practice vice virtuously, we can close a lot of these abortion facilities and bring an end to abortion by revealing the illegal things that the abortion industry is doing and prosecuting them on those fronts. That can shut down abortion facilities and shut down the entire abortion industry without even changing the law on abortion. Now, the law on abortion does have to be changed for other reasons that we outline in the book, because you have to preserve the proper nature of government. But when it comes on a very practical level to closing that abortion clinic in your town, get them on the illegal things that they're doing. Get them on the malpractice, because most people across our country, even if they believe in so-called pro-choice, doesn't mean they believe in malpractice, doesn't mean they believe in selling body parts. It doesn't mean they believe, certainly, in sexual abuse going on inside the abortion clinic.
Where does your book assert that the duty to defend life comes from?
The duty to defend life does not come from somebody telling me, whether in the state or in the church, that I have to do it. It doesn't come from a decree of the Pope. It doesn't come from a decree of the Supreme Court. It comes from our own humanity and from the God who created us. That's where the duty to defend life comes from. We're talking about something here that is so basic, that is so integral to being a human being, that you cannot renounce the responsibility, and nobody can tell you not to carry it out.
How do you explain in Abolishing Abortion that the pro-life movement is a movement of love?
Everything that the pro-life movement does is inspired by love. Love seeks the good of the other person, and therefore, first and foremost, that person's life, that person's basic protection. So it's love that inspires the effort to pass pro-life laws. It's love that inspires the effort to elect the public officials who will pass those laws. It's love that inspires counseling the pregnant mom who is afraid and alone. It's love that inspires consoling the person who has had an abortion so that they will not fall into the temptation of having another one. Love inspires not only that quiet, confidential, gentle counseling, it also inspires the protesting outside of a killing center. It's all a movement of love. We can't assign love as a motive to just one part of the pro-life movement. The whole movement itself is inspired by love, and it manifests the meaning of love. If it's not inspired by love, then it's nothing at all. But if it is, nothing can conquer it, because Scripture says love is more powerful than death and hell.
And you tell pro-life activists that we are not just working for victory, but working from victory. Please explain that further.
The victory of life has been won already. Jesus Christ has conquered death. So I tell pro-life activists, especially who are believers, as most are, all throughout the country, that we already have the victory. If life were not already victorious, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be the church. We couldn't call ourselves Christians. But we are, and we do, and therefore victory is our starting point. Christ is risen. Death has been conquered. And if the kingdom of death has been conquered, then abortion has been conquered. And that's where we start. And then we take that victory and we proclaim it. We teach the truth. We celebrate it. We serve it. We apply it to every sector of our society. And that's what the movement is all about. And that's why the movement needs to have confidence. We don't sit back and scratch our heads and wonder, how are we going to overcome the culture of death? How are we going to overcome Planned Parenthood? How are we going to overcome the Obama administration or these pro-abortion politicians? All their money, all their power, all their media, all their influence. No, we don't sit back thinking like that. We stand up and we say to the culture of death, you have no more authority here. You have no more place here. You have already been overcome, and in the name of the Christ who is already risen from the dead, we are going to proclaim that truth, celebrate it, serve it, and bring about a true culture of life.
All right. And is there a website, and where can people get the book?
The book is available at abolishingabortion.com, a website that will enable them to not only see in summary fashion the message of the book, but also to order it from various different sources, including from Priests for Life. And if they order it from Priests for Life, I'll be happy to personalize it, and people can make that request on our website, and I'll be happy to sign every copy. So I do hope all of our viewers get their own copy, and get a couple of other copies, too, that they can give to others as gifts.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, friends. Father Frank Pavone here, National Director of Priests for Life. If you watch these broadcasts, if you follow our website and receive our mailings, you know the tremendous and varied work that is being carried out by the team of Priests for Life. Whether it's our priests preaching the pro-life message in parishes, or our healing ministries of Rachel's Vineyard and Silent No More, or the work of Alveda King mobilizing the black community, our youth outreach with Brian Kemper, our international work with Marie Smith, our publishing, our broadcasting, and so much more. All of this costs money, as you can well imagine. And yet, Priests for Life is not funded through the Vatican or through the dioceses or the church officially. It's funded by people like you who believe in our work, who are inspired by our messages, and who want to see the unborn protected from abortion. You're the ones who support us. So like Mother Angelica used to say, put us between your gas and electric bill. Send us some support so that we can not only continue this good work, but expand it. Because we always have great ideas, great suggestions from our team, and we know what needs to be done to bring an end to abortion in America and throughout the world. The challenge is always having enough resources to do it. So I'd like to invite you to make a generous contribution to the work of Priests for Life today. I'm not ashamed to ask, because we're asking for the very lives that all of us are committed to save. Go to prolifedonation.org, and you'll find a form there where you can make a secure online credit card donation, or if you prefer to send a check, you'll find the information there, to which you can send a check made out to Priests for Life. You'll also have the opportunity to become a monthly contributor, and I'll tell you the advantage of that for us. When we know that we have a faithful core of donors who are committed to send in a donation each and every month, well, then that helps us to plan more accurately and more confidently what we will be able to do with our projects from month to month. So I want you to consider that as well. But send us a donation today, because especially in the summer months, the donations fall off significantly. That's a usual pattern every year. People are busy with vacations. People are spending money perhaps on a well-deserved rest from their usual work. But nevertheless, the work of saving lives doesn't stop, and the expenses don't stop either. So I ask you to be extra generous in the summer months. But please go to prolifedonation.org and help us out today with a tax-deductible contribution. Remember, we rely on faithful pro-life people like you. Unlike Planned Parenthood, we don't get big grants of money from the government. We rely on you, and with you, I know we will succeed. This is Father Frank Pavone of Priests for Life. God bless you.
Has this ever happened to you, maybe your daughter, a niece, or a female friend? You discover you have some sort of a medical problem related to your female biology. So you make a visit to the OBGYN, and what do they say? Well, the pill, the birth control pill, that's the answer. Well, we are here to tell you that it's not the answer. Hi, I'm Teresa Tomeo, co-host of The Catholic View for Women, joined again by my dear friend and sister, Astrid Bennett Gutierrez from, of course, Hispanics for Life, and my sister Janet Miranda from Defending Life here on EWTN, also from Priests for Life, and, of course, the Silent No More Awareness Campaign. I can't tell you how many women, and I went through it, Janet, you went through it when I was a teenager because of very, very heavy periods. Yeah. The doctor right away tried to put me on the pill.
Yeah, well,
and then when I went into, my mother said no, but as I got older and they really couldn't find, or they didn't think they had an answer, in high school and college I was on it for a little while, and it caused a lot of problems.
Oh, wow. That's right.
Yeah.
Same thing happened to me, basically, you know, in high school, extremely heavy periods. I mean, so much so that you feel like you can't even leave the house. And that's what we're talking about, heavy periods. You know, you can't go to school that day. And my mother's Catholic, OBGYN said, well, you know, put her on the pill. I mean, I wasn't sexually active at all, but the idea was they just were handing out the pill like it was
like candy.
No big deal, you know. know? And I know we've covered this topic on a number of our shows in the past. And of course, we talk about the work of Dr. Hilgers and naprotechnology and how there's so many doctors trained around the country. But then our viewers would email us and say, but none of those doctors are in my community. What should I do? And so what we did was, thanks actually to Astrid, you know Dr. Teresa Steegen, down there in Southern California. And why don't you just tell our viewers a little bit about her?
She's a wonderful pro-life gynecologist who has a pro-life approach to her work, and basically, which means she does not promote ever abortion or contraception, but then she also provides healthy alternatives, ethical alternatives like naprotechnology. She's trained by Dr. Hilgers.
Right.
So Dr. Hilgers, what he's done is, instead of people feeling like they have to go to Nebraska to be seen by him, he's trained physicians. And just out of medical school, Dr. Steegen went to study under Dr. Hilgers to learn naprotechnology, to be able to bring this wonderful hope for Catholic women, for all women really, because this really does address the issues that women are facing. The pill's not the answer. Even though a pill's not a sin, we should say, for medical reasons, you still get all the negative effects of it.
It's a group 1 carcinogen, as we know, by the World Health Organization. Our good friend Angela Manfranchi, the Breast Cancer Prevention Institute and all that, she has spoken so clearly about how bad the pill is. You know, it's a cancer-causing agent. But when we sat down with Dr. Teresa, I remember I said to her, look, you have to help us. Now, what we're giving here, I want to be clear to our viewers, this is not medical advice for you per se. But what she does is, and you're going to listen to this now in a minute, she tells you the questions to ask your doctor.
See, this is so important.
That's what's so important.
Because how many, as you said, if you don't have a pro-life OBGYN, you really have no alternative but to go to someone who might be prescribing and believing in these things that are against our beliefs. But you can push a little bit and be proactive. You have to. We just can't take things for granted now. We have to make sure we're doing the right thing for ourselves.
So we asked her, the first question we said to her, okay, heavy periods, and of course the other biggie is acne. As you know, they give, believe it or not, they give the pill to girls because of acne. So let's see what Dr. Teresa said and get your notebooks out, brothers, take notes, but let's see what she had to say.
So in my practice, I do get a lot of mothers who bring their teenage daughters with various women's health conditions, heavy periods, painful periods, premenstrual syndrome. And I'm able to treat those very successfully with naprotechnology. Naprotechnology stands for Natural Procreative Technology, and it's a means of identifying underlying causes for women's health conditions and then addressing those. So that's the approach that I take in my office, and it's very successful. However, sometimes a naprotechnology trained physician is not always readily available to other women in other parts of the country. That's okay. There are still things that you can do or that you can request of your physician to get good assessment and treatment for the conditions that your daughters may be facing. For example, say your daughter has heavy menstrual periods. Often what physicians will do is simply put her on the birth control pill. There's a number of reasons why that's not a great idea. First of all, there are side effects to the birth control pill, some just annoying, like weight gain, some that are more serious, like blood clots or liver tumors. So what you can do is when you go in to your physician's office and they present you with birth control for her heavy periods, try asking them, well, why is she having these heavy periods? There are things that you can ask for. For example, what causes heavy periods? Fibroids can cause heavy periods. Adenomyosis, a condition where the lining of the uterus invades the muscle of the uterus, causes heavy periods. Bleeding disorders like von Willebrand's disease, which is a disease of not clotting your blood well enough, and it's a genetic tendency, can cause this. Other blood clotting disorders that are more poorly defined can cause it. Hormonal problems can cause it. Having low progesterone tends to predispose you to heavier periods. Or having something else like a mass in the lining of the uterus can potentially cause it. So ask them, what's causing this? And can we look for ways to identify what the causes are? Typically speaking, in my practice, I would evaluate them with an ultrasound to see if there's any fibroids, if the lining of the uterus is abnormally thick, which might indicate any sort of a mass inside the uterine lining. I would check them with blood work for their blood clotting ability. Is there any problem with that? And then I would check them for their progesterone levels to make sure they're making adequate progesterone. It's very common to have low progesterone, especially in the early years of a woman's menstrual life, because things have not quite evened out hormonally, and those low progesterone levels are going to lead to heavier periods. So those are all things that you can look at. Now, if they come back with the answer of, we still don't know what this is, what's causing it, that doesn't mean that the birth control pill is your only option. You know, if they find that it's not hormonal, it's not fibroids, and you can't direct therapy to those things, there is a medication that is not hormonal and does not increase the risk for breast cancer. It's called Lysteta. It's taken only when you need it and only to reduce heavier periods. So why expose your daughter to the risk of breast cancer and the other side effects that the birth control pill brings when you can get the same sort of relief from heavy periods with the medication that's taken only for a few days out of the cycle instead of every day, and that is non-hormonal in nature and will not interfere with her body's natural cycle. Another common reason why the birth control pill is prescribed is for acne. We've already talked about some of the side effects, serious ones, that the birth control pill brings, and so those side effects remain in effect when it's being prescribed for acne. And so the balance of risk and benefit there is actually pretty bad. To be weighing in for birth control pill just for acne. And the truth is that there are effective treatments out there for acne that don't involve the birth control pill. Such things as topical antibiotics, Retin-A. Sometimes seeing a dermatologist is going to be your best bet in terms of getting effective treatment because they're specialists in this area. More natural causes or more natural treatments are available too. Things like an enzyme called serrapeptase, which helps break down abnormal fibrous tissue, which is part of what's the problem in cystic acne. That's the acne that's really big and deforming and causes a lot of scarring. Serrapeptase is one area that's being investigated pretty heavily as a very effective treatment. So it's really not necessary to be on the birth control pill in order to address acne, and in fact it's quite harmful for the reasons that we've already discussed.
Great interview.
Great. And so, you know, I hope, especially the moms watching, take those points to your doctor, you know, and don't get the pill and make them kind of force. And if your doctor refuses to, then go to another doctor, get another opinion, because she really gave us some good advice. And just to follow up on the birth control pill and acne, I know, Teresa, we were at Legatus conference. We were giving a presentation on the pill, you know, how bad it is.
Legatus is an international Catholic organization of executives, and we were speaking. Actually, you were with us. We were at the
you
Catholic
were
View.
All three of us were there.
Right.
We were all there, but I was standing online. We were having a lunch buffet, and the woman behind me gave me this story, and she said, Janet, I just have to share this with you that I just came last week from my best friend, her daughter's funeral. And she said this young lady was away at college and began to break out severely in acne. This was her freshman year of college. And she went to the campus doctor, and they wanted to give her Yaz or Yasmin, which is one of the birth control pills. And she called her mom. And of course, this kid was, you know, living a life of chastity. You know, she was didn't even have a boyfriend. And, you know, her mom had severe acne. So when the daughter said, well, they want to give me Yasmin to take for my acne, the mother thought of her own experience and said, well, you know, it'll clear up her acne, and she's not sexually active, she's being chaste, all right, it's okay. So she started taking the Yasmin, and 3 months later, she collapsed in her dorm. They rushed her to the hospital. She fell into a coma, and she stayed that way for 5 years. And then she passed away it was like the burial was the week before we gave that talk. And here it was, you know, I know the statistics, and there are people suing Bayer Pharmaceutical, which is a company that produces Yasmin, because of women who have died. There's thousands of lawsuits because of physical damage and because of the deaths. But here, God put in front of us this tragedy that we could tell others that it's true. Women are dying from taking the pill. Women are being hurt from taking the pill.
And it's no secret. I mean, you open up these women's magazines, and you know, you have a girl smiling and the package of birth control pills. You flip the page. Now it's two full pages of all side effects. Right. Cancer, tumors. I mean, strokes, and we're taking this. I mean, it doesn't make sense at all.
No.
And why isn't there a cancer-causing or, you know, other problematic hormone contraception for men. I think that's very, very sexist, don't you?
That's true.
And this is supposed to be freeing, and yet we're the ones who are still injecting all this
Poisoning
garbage
ourselves.
into our bodies.
That's right.
It's interesting because I think there's a couple of things going on here, and we're going to continue our discussion after the break because we have another clip with a good doctor, but I think there's a couple of things going on here. This has been an indoctrination of the medical community, which has totally been, again, indoctrinated into saying abortion, contraception, those are just givens. And I also think that, remember the doctor said there could be all these underlying reasons. Well, it takes a lot more work and a lot more effort on the part of a doctor because this is only masking the problems. This doesn't solve any of those problems. If they go off the pill, and eventually they probably will because of complications.
The problems are going to come right back.
Problems are going to come right back. So that's why we're having this discussion, to show you why, for so many reasons. Of course, we know morally and spiritually what the church says about this, but overall, the pill is definitely not the answer. More coming up. Stay tuned to The Catholic View for Women. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Catholic View for Women, news and views from a truly Catholic perspective. Continue our discussion this episode on why the pill is definitely not the answer. And Astrid, you wanted to pick up on a couple of points that the doctor made. Doctor is basically coaching families on how to ask for alternatives to the pill. You don't want something that's a class 1 carcinogen in your system. And of course, we know the moral implications. Sometimes young girls on the birth control pill, well, it's a temptation to also understand that maybe they can have sex without consequences. So she's coaching families on how to do this. Now, I want to just warn families that are out there. I get calls from women calling me and saying, look, I'm following your advice, but my doctor, not only did he not know anything about natural alternatives, but he scolded me and sent me home. So I would say to women watching and listening to Dr. Stegan, stick to your guns, insist on better alternatives, and if you don't get the answer you are looking for, go to another doctor, or go on the Pope Paul VI Institute website, find a NAPRO-trained physician. Drive, I'm sorry, sometimes it's an hour or two, but it's worth it. It's your daughter's health. A friend of mine did that with her daughter. She lives in Miami, and she drove 2 hours because she was having the same problems with heavy periods, and the OBGYN said the same thing. And right away, she went to see this doctor and started to feel better because she gave her some really good advice. Dr. Stegan is at the Mystical Rose Clinic in Fallbrook, California, which is a 2-hour drive from LA, and sometimes we do have to send women out there, and they go gladly because they're tired of having to put up with the effects of these.
Well, it's really bad medicine. That's what it is. Their practice, and it's lazy medicine, because if you heard what she said, well, you have to look further. They just want to write a script. Next patient. Next, what did she say? Oh no, we have to do blood work, wait to get the blood work back. I have to do a sonogram. Like, she was going through all these little checkpoints. Why? To make sure that your whole reproductive system is functioning properly. Yes. When you think back now, I have friends that developed later on fibroids and all kinds of problems. Well, they probably developed as small little things when they were younger, but they were given the pill. It wasn't diagnosed, and it kept getting worse. Get worse. Right. I mean, you hear women sometimes say, "Oh, I had a fibroid the size of a softball or a baseball," and all this stuff. Well, what do you think that's going on here? It's undiagnosed, shoving the pill at them, and then later on they have major problems. So you really, like you're saying, Asha, it's good advice. Stick to your guns. And I think if you push back, a good doctor may at first be a little bit, well, what's this? Nobody questions me. But if they really care about their patients, you can help them. This is an opportunity in addition to helping yourself, but this could be a means of evangelization, I think. Yeah, absolutely. Well, we have a little bit more advice from her. We asked her a few more questions. And again, take out your notebooks, go some of the teacher, take notes, and let's hear what else good advice Dr. Teresa is giving us.
Another common thing that I see moms bringing in their teenage daughters to my office for is irregular periods. This could be anything from having them too frequently, twice a month, to having a period maybe only once or twice a year. And the important thing to understand about this is that that's a symptom of something going on hormonally. This is not something that is supposed to be covered up. You're supposed to be finding the reason why this is happening. But a lot of doctors simply just give the pill because it gives you a nice regular period, and now you think nothing's wrong. But the problem is they could be covering up a much more serious health condition. There are different reasons why a woman's cycle might be irregular. It could be due to a thyroid problem. It could be due to high prolactin, which is the milk-producing hormone. It could be due to something called polycystic ovarian syndrome, or PCOS, which is very common. I see a lot of that in my office. It could be due to perhaps she's just early in her cycle and her hormones haven't evened out. So why mess with her hormones trying to even themselves out by giving her a hormonal medication like oral contraceptives? But the important thing is to try and figure out which of those causes is leading to the irregular periods, not to just cover them up with the pill. And so doing things to ask for there when you go in to see your physician. Ask them to check her thyroid. Ask them to check the prolactin. Ask them to check the male hormones. Those hormones are often elevated in PCOS. Ask them to do an ultrasound to evaluate her ovaries. Women with PCOS have a bunch of tiny little cysts in their ovaries. Basically, press them to give you a diagnosis and not just a prescription. That's what you want them to do. And then once the diagnosis has been made, then you can treat accordingly. If it's high prolactin, you give a medication to bring it down. If it's thyroid disease, there's thyroid replacement. If it's polycystic ovarian syndrome, this is the most important one of all to make sure that you address adequately, because polycystic ovarian syndrome, or PCOS, is associated with increased risks in certain health conditions, including cancer in the uterus, which I have diagnosed as young as 28 years old, diabetes, increased risk for heart disease, and later in life, infertility. These are all serious women's health conditions and general health conditions that a woman could be completely unaware of, that she is at risk for these things simply because her symptoms were covered up with the birth control pill. But knowing that she has PCOS can allow her to be proactive and decrease her risks for these things. Another important thing is that with PCOS, a lot of times, even when they do make the diagnosis, they simply hand out the birth control pill. And they do that because it provides some level of progesterone, which is protective against cancer in the uterus. However, as we discussed earlier, it raises the risk for breast cancer. So you're lowering the risk for one cancer, but you're raising the risk for another. And it's the cancer that she's most likely to get that you are increasing the risk for. So you're not really winning on the risk-benefit analysis there. What you want to do is to consider doing natural progesterone in a fashion that cooperates with a normal menstrual cycle. That will help protect her against uterine cancer. It'll help her have more regular periods. A lot of girls feel more normal that way. But it's not going to increase her risk for breast cancer or for any other cancer for that matter. The other thing that's important is to give them lifestyle changes if they have PCOS. They are more prone to developing diabetes, but if you instill in them values of healthy food choices and healthy exercise regimens, you're going to help them decrease that risk as well. So for her health, it is important. Do not take that prescription for the birth control pill just to give your daughter regular periods. Find out why she's having irregular periods.
It's really interesting because you often hear people who defend the birth control pill saying, well, you know, it helps in some areas of treating cancer, but it's like pick your poison. I mean, why would you even go there?
I know. I mean, it really is terrible. And the shame of it is really that there are so many doctors out there that are just giving the pill out like it's no big deal. And Catholic doctors too. You know, I mean, like I said, the Catholic doctors I went to were giving out the pill.
My
like
people
no
perish for lack of knowledge, Hosea 4:6.
Exactly.
And the thing is, if a young girl starts taking it for acne, and then she knows that it also has an, birth control effect, I mean, she'll probably continue taking it into her later years. And when are they going to find out that it's bad? I think we have to share with everyone just what a poison it is for our society and for marriages, not only for our health. I mean, this is really Pandora's box.
But I really think that there's all these underlying things going on here. You know, as we said earlier, the doctors and the medical community has been pretty much indoctrinated into this idea that the pill and contraception has to be given, abortion has to be an option, and you have amazing doctors like Dr. Teresa and Dr. Hilders and those others who have been trained under him, who are out there just swimming upstream and are looked at and looked down upon by the medical community. But I think the underlying thing here too is that the medical community has been convinced to promote this culture of over-sexualization and, quite frankly, the culture of death.
That's right. Well, you know, to go back now for a little catechesis, because really, when you think about it, God's way is what's really, He's got our best interest at heart.
God's way is the best way.
The best way.
Father knows best.
And of course, we know the encyclical Humanae Vitae, Paul VI. I mean,
most
really,
prophetic encyclical I think ever written.
That's right. Let me just read a brief quote from that, and here it is. It's from part of a speech he gave back in 1965, and from which Humanae Vitae came. You must strive to multiply bread so that it suffices for the tables of mankind, and not rather favor an artificial control of birth, which would be irrational, in order to diminish the number of guests at the banquet of life.
Wow, that's beautiful.
It's beautiful.
And then we have a quote from the Catechism. We know that the birth control pill is very detrimental to the health, but the teaching of the Church against contraceptive methods like the birth control pill is in the Catechism, paragraph 2370. Periodic continence, that is, the methods of birth regulation based on self-observation and the use of infertile periods, is in conformity with the objective criteria of morality. These methods respect the bodies of the spouses, encourage tenderness between them, and favor the education of an authentic freedom. In contrast, every action which, whether in anticipation of the conjugal act, or in its accomplishment, or in the development of its natural consequences, proposes, whether as an end or as a means, to render procreation impossible, is intrinsically evil, like the birth control pill.
That's right.
How many people actually stop, though, and read the Catechism?
No.
Or read, for example, Humanae Vitae, and they just automatically swallow what the culture is giving us. I mean, I've had this conversation with so many people in my own circle, and I know you two have as well.
I know. I mean, it really is a shame. And when I think of, too, the number of people, like good friends in our circle, that their daughters are taking the pill, and you try to warn them not to, and you shouldn't, and you try both ways. Okay, here's the Church's teaching, but then look at what the doctors are saying, the good Catholic doctors, that how bad it is, you know, and they just don't want to listen. And I don't know. I think we have to just keep speaking the truth, and I think Dr. Teresa's advice of how to go out there into your own medical community and seek out good medical care, because that's the problem. They're substituting being a good doc by just handing off that prescription.
Right. We only have about 2 minutes left, so we need to get to the homework. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but Janet, and there's a couple things we want our viewers to do.
That's right. Well, first of all, I just want to remind everyone about our Madonna of the Kitchen, available at the Religious Catalog, and she's our patroness for our series, and of course, very beautiful symbols that are there, and it comes with all the description, and it's good to have around. And if we look to Mary, the true model, then we would be less apt to fall into the trap of the pill. But for homework, of course, one item is to read my book, Recall Abortion, especially I had chapter 10. I did a whole chapter on the pill called A Hard Pill to Swallow, and you can get that at the Religious Catalog. Go to our website, thecatholicviewforwomen.com, where we're going to have, of course, discussion questions. You can sign up for the e-letter, and we will have links to the Humanae Vitae encyclical if you'd like to read that. And in fact, at Priest for Life, Father Pavone has done a beautiful study guide for that encyclical. And that's it for that.
I think don't be afraid to ask questions of your doctor.
Yeah.
You know, they're not gods. They're men and women, and they are responsible for your health, and you're paying them through your insurance company, and in many cases some pretty high rates to have your best interest in mind, and you really need to be able to be confident. And if they're not answering your questions, then for crying out loud, go find another doctor.
Exactly.
We thank you for tuning in and remembering that the pill is not the answer. The answer is always going to be in the Catholic Church, because Christ is the answer. And that's why we're bringing you these programs on The Catholic View for Women. We'll see you next time. Again, the website, thecatholicviewforwomen.com. Thanks for watching.
Hello and welcome to Priests for Life TV. I'm Father Dennis Wild, Augustinian priest and Associate Director of Priests for Life. In my 20 years with this premier pro-life organization, I am humbled and privileged to work side by side with like-minded associates whose insights, efforts, and persistence in the face of defending life has been truly inspiring. But also in speaking to over 800 parishes, schools, and conventions in that 20-year period, I have seen the heart, mind, and sacrifice of legions of pro-life activists all throughout the United States who carry the ball to defend the unborn. Moreover, as my opening feeder here shows, I love giving classical piano concerts to carry the blend of music and life to local listeners all over. Welcome to Priests for Life TV, and let's all together pray and work to defend those who have no choice, the unborn. May God bless you.
Well, friends, I hope that you've enjoyed this broadcast segment of Priests for Life TV. We will be each day increasing the amount of time during which we bring you live broadcasts. And in the intervening time, you can call upon our large archive of video to watch on demand. So we hope that you'll spread the word about Priests for Life TV as we grow this brand new pro-life internet channel. Thank you for watching. Please do spread the word, and we'll be back with another broadcast segment very soon. This is Father Frank Pavone of Priests for Life.